Now for the question of the week. It's this: how does employee experience initiatives relate to people, data, and analytics? And by the way, if you want to submit a question, go to PAFOW.net, and there's a button there where you can submit your question. And truth be told, these syntheses, you want me to mumble that again? This is a synthesis of various questions that we've received around these themes, and we put it in this type of bucket, the simple question. But here is the essence of it, is that employee experience has been defined around moments that matter, around key touch points, and it hasn't involved others that do work on behalf of the organization, namely contractors, consultants, outsource providers, people who are in the workflow of work. That being said, organizations by and large have agreed that the people who are a source of competitive advantage, who are doing the lion's share of the high value work, are in fact employees. Why would you otherwise hire them? So now they're coming in, and we want to enable them to do great work, to collaborate effectively, to innovate, and do all those good things. And so how do we do that? And historically, we've talked about talent management. We've talked about experience economy in the 90s. If I go back there, when we featured Disney and going to movies, it's about the experience. Fast forward in the early 2000s, the notion of employee experience started to gain weight. It's like, what is happening when people go through their workday? And are we consciously creating that experience, or is it just, a big blah? And are they getting overly impacted with communications and asks, or is it not enough? Are they unclear? Do they have anxiety because they don't understand where leaders want to go, or how they can be empowered and resourced and so forth? So over the last 10 years or so, we really started to step into this idea of employee experience management. And the idea that we can do this without understanding the data underneath it is frankly erroneous, because data drives behavior. It gives us visibility into what these experiences are. So let's talk about that. The experiences that we see are captured in this graphic, and it's very simple, granted, but I wanted to walk you through it real quick. Most organizations are out there, they're recruiting still. It depends on what's happening during the pandemic, of course, but they'll have new hires, and onboarding during remote work is a challenge in and of itself, which could warrant new data. But people will stay over time. They might get promoted. They might be identified as a high potential, and they'll go on a certain track, and then they'll go over time and work on teams and contribute in meaningful ways. And eventually they'll exit the organization. Something will happen, which is all fine and good. It's the natural course of events. Underlying all these experiences are a host of technologies that are capturing data on that individual, on their teams. And we have to recognize up front that these data have been generated to facilitate or stand up a process. They have not been generated for analytical purposes or to understand an employee experience. Sometimes the data are very appropriate to shed light on what is in fact happening. Other data might be totally off the mark, and it might even in fact be misleading. And that then might warrant the collection of new data that is in fact appropriate. So one of the roles of a people analytics professional is to ascertain what's appropriate and to what degree it's appropriate, and also identify what is not appropriate. Now, I'm using the word appropriate intentionally. I'm not talking about data cleanliness. That is something else. I'm not talking about staging the data. Staging the data is aggregating the data and making sure it is workable for analytical purposes. What I am making clear is that the data within the employee life cycle, within the employee experience, oftentimes are not appropriate. So what's fantastic about employee experience initiatives and the application of design thinking within that process is consciously crafting these experiences and understanding where the data are and where the data needs to be among that data that's currently not present. So if we can go back to the actual depiction, I just want to highlight where these are different. So historically, we've had HR technologies. They have been around to facilitate an HR process. Again, some of the data is good, some of it's not. More recently, we've been leveraging the data from collaboration tools, email, calendar, and communication tools. And I've done a few podcasts lately with Jan Rezov of Time is Limited, Sharon Yaroslavsky from Cassiopeia, of course, Workplace Analytics. There is some fantastic tools out there that can let us understand to a greater degree what people are actually spending their time on in remote work environments. It's hugely important. And then we have this external data that is becoming more prominent and has over the past several years, where we have MZ and LinkedIn Talent Insights and Horsefly and Claro, who are grabbing this external data and shedding light on what's actually happening in your organization. So we have all this data, and can we use this data to shed light on what's happening with employees day to day? Absolutely, because this is what's happening. We've had these HR transformation initiatives going on for a while, digital transformation initiatives, business transformation, IT transformation. It gets to be old hat, but these all interrelate, and they should interrelate to a greater degree. And that, in my mind, is actual work transformation. And we have not thought about this holistically in most organizations. However, COVID-19 has mandated that we actually think about it. So now we have the employee experience of remote work. How are people doing at home? Are they resourced to be successful? What's their internet connection like? Do they have kids? If so, how many? At what ages? What are the constraints? What's their experience like day to day? And are we able to manage their workload and help them be successful accordingly? This then evolves into what I'm calling perpetual work design, meaning we're consciously crafting the employee experience and saying, okay, is it going to be in a workplace? Is it going to be at home? Is there going to be a hybrid model? Are we not going to come back to these big buildings? Are we going to have satellite offices in smaller groups so we can maintain social distancing and things like that? Who knows? But we're going to have to design that work with teams that are diverse, IT, HR, legal, operations, on down the line. And again, where I see a lot of hope in this is that many tiger teams or crisis management teams have been spun up. As they continue to do their work on a regular basis, I would hope that they are thinking about perpetual work design. I would hope they're thinking about employee experience management, because I believe creating a sustained process around this is what's called for. Because even when we come back to work, it's not going to be as it was, nor should it be. I can cite Dr. Jeffrey Pfeffer and many others about how we were, Rob Cross, about collaborative overload, about burnout, about compromising health and well-being. We have a massive opportunity to create better experiences, manage workload. And so I hope we all take advantage of that in the coming days, weeks, months, because it is, in fact, our new normal. So with that, take another short break, and we're going to come back and talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that will tee up our time with Stephen White.